Just how good is this Marlins offense? We were going to speak about it yesterday. We're speaking about it today. This is Locked On Marlins. Digging into the offense, baby.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, on Twitter, guys, at Miami_Marlins_UK. If you are listening to the pod, hit subscribe. Much appreciated. You'll get your episodes to your device immediately. Notifications on, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. This, of course, is your team every day. And there is a YouTube channel. I highly recommend you head on over there. I even strongly recommend you hit subscribe. Much appreciated. If you are watching, you will see the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, is back in the house. You will see we're in the same gear as yesterday's episode or today's episode. But nevertheless, UK GOAT, Sean Barrett in the house. How are we doing?
Not too bad, Pete. I'm always happy to do a doubleheader with you.
You know it, baby. You know it. Gotta love these doubleheaders. This is a 20-minute doubleheader as opposed to a 7 or 9-inning doubleheader. However, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this one, and that is the Marlins offense and some numbers, this episode is sponsored by Sleeper, and you can swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, Sean. We teased it out yesterday. We ran out of time because we had to get into center field. We had to get into managers. We covered it all. But we want to talk about this Marlins offense. Something that caught my eye on Twitter. There was a couple of things that caught my eye, actually. And so I thought it was a good idea to dig into some numbers. One of the things that was interesting was the Marlins and their average, team average, which is currently ranked number 3 in Major League Baseball. And that got me interested. Naturally, it's going to be propped up a touch by Luis Arias, obviously. But that got me thinking. Also, what we then saw was where the Marlins are in terms of their win-loss record in Major League Baseball. And then when you look at all of the number of runs scored by all of the teams above the Marlins or even below them, the Marlins are some way off the pace. And so their average is high. Their win count is high. Their run count is a touch low. So I felt this would be a good episode to dig in some numbers, mate, and just try and, sit back and reflect or let the numbers tell us what kind of offense this really is. When we were heading into the year, we think back to 2022, the big boys have got to go era. The Marlins went heavy on power. They wanted power sticks. They wanted to blast it everywhere in a ballpark that is not conducive to those types of hitters, by the way. So that was issue number one. Anyway, they decided to move away from that and go down to a more contact-heavy, bat-to-ball skills, ball in play type of approach. So with the Marlins sitting there at 3rd in terms of team average, I would say in some ways that's probably a decent indicator, right, Sean?
It is, but unfortunately it's one number of many, believe me. Look, the Marlins hitting for a high average is great, but the fact that it doesn't correspond to a high runs situation is a bit concerning. But I think the way I look at it is that the Marlins work off the back of their pitching. Starting pitching has been, there's been some bright spots and there's been some not so bright spots. But one of those not so bright spots is Sandy, and we're seeing that turning of that page. I think we go into the second half of this season with more confidence that Sandy is getting right. The bullpen, of course, has been nails so far this year. The low ERA of the bullpen really has made a big difference to this team. So we spoke for ages since the Marlins have had Sandy, basically, and this elite pitching staff. and said, if this team can just hit for not average, but at average, and right now, the team, the way it is for the season, is at 98 WRC plus. They are as near as damn it as average. That's 20th in baseball, but essentially the offense is average, major league average, and with the pitching, that's how they're winning games, and that's got to continue, of course. But I think as the starting pitching potentially has room to grow, the bullpen, you can never trust the bullpen for too long. So I think maybe there's a step back there in the second half. The offense can stay at or around 100 WRC plus. That average, as you said, Luis Arias is going to hit like high 300s, if not 400. So he's going to drag that number up. I would be very interested, actually. I wish we'd done it before now, to see what the team's average would be without him in the lineup.
Next episode.
I'm pretty certain they wouldn't be top 5.
No way. No way when you've got a guy that's leading the league in hits and average and you name it. Like, it's fair to say the number is propped up, but that in many ways that's fine, because for me the plan, the strategic plan or the roster construction plan was clear. And you move Pablito, you go and get Luis Arias for exactly this reason, to hit for average. He's never been a power hitter. You weren't expecting any power production. I'd love to see him in the home run derby, though, by the way, just to see what he could do. Like, if he really wanted to, I'd love to see that. It's a bit like that. Who were we talking about recently about the home run derby, and they think they could absolutely just tear it up if they wanted to? I forget. It was someone like
Suzuki said it back in the day.
Who did?
Ichiro Suzuki.
Oh, Ichiro. Maybe that's who it was. It was talked about recently. But maybe it was that Ichiro said if he really wanted to, he could win a derby if he wanted to. Anyway, going off on a tangent there. The thing is like that was the plan for Kim. So he identified the talent, traded for that, paid the price to get that guy in. He's panned out. And lo and behold, we were expecting a high average team, a team to hit for contact as a group. They are. And there's not a lot of power in this lineup. Like, we've sacrificed a decent chunk of power. But the other thing too with that is, well, what's the strikeout doing? Because last year the strikeouts were like insane. So it was just that the big boys were trying to go, but they just kept striking out. It was shocking. When you go and look at strikeouts this year, the Marlins are 10th. They're bottom 10, which is a good thing in terms of if you're looking at it in that way, sorting by that version. But, they've really reduced the strikeout. They're 704 strikeouts this year, whereas, the Twins, 880. So there you go. They're leading the way. They've struck out nearly 180 times more than the Marlins. Interesting, it's the Twins, right? They've had to step back in their offense because Luis Arias isn't there. So this was by design. The interesting bit is whether it's sustainable. And the other thing, too, as we look ahead, is whether the Marlins can actually win games in series against really good teams with this type of offense. I think it's going to be interesting. We've obviously just come from a series where we're absolutely obliterated by the Bravos. But I do wonder if the Marlins, they have a league average-ish, 98 WRC plus. They're a touch under average. There still is a need to add to this offense, though, Sean, right? We can't get away from the fact that they're still missing a piece or two, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you want us to look at how consistent we can expect this to be, they're also top 5 in batting average on balls in play. So it's not egregiously high, but it is a case of there may be a bit of luck there. And talking about power, I mean, they're bottom 5 in doubles, bottom 5 in home runs. The Atlanta Braves have more than double the Marlins home runs. The Marlins are, I mean, let's be real. If the Marlins are going to be competitive in the second half and look for a playoff run, then there's going to have to be some additions. The way that the injuries are occurring right now, I mean, it is a case of you want one or two bats, you want one or two arms, you want a bullpen piece as well on top of that. I mean, all of a sudden you're going to end up with your top 30 prospects being, well, me and you basically. But if the Marlins are all in, and if Kim is all in, and on a, what was she on now, a 3-month contract, a 6-month contract left, there's no reason why she wouldn't be all in. Yeah, the Marlins need to make some additions, but look, this has been a fun season. It's been a great season. It's been the best season for the Marlins, albeit apart from the COVID shortened season, in over a decade. So I don't want to be too negative, but you've also got to be realistic. There's going to need to be some additions to turn this average offense into an above average offense. And last time we spoke, we talked about the idea that there aren't many teams at the top, there aren't many teams at the bottom, a lot of people in the middle. Yeah. There's slight separation starting to occur.
Yeah, there is.
More teams are getting closer to double digits away from the wild card run. You're starting to see sort of 6 teams at the top and 6 teams at the bottom rather than 4 and 4. So I think, we're 4 weeks, 3 weeks away from the deadline now, but I think we're starting to see a little bit of separation now, and we'll start to hear some names hopefully, and we can all get ourselves excited about that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, and I'm completely with you on that, and I think it's something that Craig's been talking about on Twitter and calling out of, pretty regularly. Like, whilst there's a need to upgrade now, just the pool of sellers is just too small at this point, and it means the pool of sellers are just sitting there, just waiting for a best offer, and they want to maximize their asset by waiting until a pressure point. So, this extra wild card has created a situation where more teams are in it. And there's some teams that should be in it that are actually underperforming, like a Mets, like a Cardinals, like a Padres. That probably doesn't help either, where the teams that are slightly off the pace are teams that are actually expected to be doing well. So you've got that situation where teams that, maybe like the Marlins in some ways, you were thinking, could they be sellers? If it didn't go well, the Marlins would absolutely be selling Hoy, Soler, maybe Coop, maybe Wendell, a few of the relievers, Dylan Floro, but they're in the hunt. So they're absolutely not selling now. Are the Mets going to sell? I don't know. Are the Padres going to sell? Do the Cardinals want to sell? That's kind of the problem here, where the teams at the bottom aren't the teams you're expecting. Thus, there's no market at this point. And the market that's out there is probably way overpriced. So it's really tricky. But to your point, separation will continue. Like I said on the last episode, the Cardinals, if they get swept here in Miami, and I'm not predicting that. Yes, I am. But if they do, 4 games, on the road, they're getting spanked by the Marlins. There's some serious considerations they have to be, put in towards that. So the Marlins clearly have a need for some more offense, mate. The power is way down. We've seen that. But by design, strikeouts are down, average up, power's down. One thing I must say, mate, that has caught me off guard this year is stolen bases. I was expecting this team to be agile in many ways. I was expecting them to be running, particularly with the rule changes, particularly after what we saw with John Birdie, particularly with Jazz. And this team has been, middle of the pack, bottom third, really, in stolen base, attempts, success. They've been caught stealing, relatively high number as well. And it kind of feels like the team in some ways just kind of stopped running relatively recently at all. I don't know why that's happened, but you look at the team that's pacing Major League Baseball, and it's the Tampa Bay Rays. They've stole 50 more bases thus far than the Marlins. Those boys, they're in motion, and the Marlins less so. I don't know why. I don't know if it has really impacted the team. I mean, the team won a ton of games, so, it's just one of those numbers. But I just feel like this team could be a little bit more aggressive on the bases, and I think, that would kind of help with the run accumulation, let's say. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a case of, obviously with Jazz and his playing time through the injuries, when Jazz is healthy and when Jazz is on the field, he steals bases. That 40 stolen base counter that you had, a healthy Jazz hits that probably. Yeah. Bertie hasn't played as much this year. He's played a chunk, and he hasn't stolen anywhere near as many bases per plate appearance, say, than he did last year. So that's certainly quite interesting why he's stopped running. Obviously, the playing time and the consistency, that doesn't help. especially with your timing and things like that. But with the smaller bases, you'd think that he would get more. Arias in the early part of the season, I was calling on him to steal more. Obviously, the batting average and the on base percentage is super high. And the Marlins got caught out quite a lot with the double plays to begin the season.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a case of Arias needs to start stealing bases to stop it from happening, or at least a hit and run situation, because if you're going to get a double play, you might as well run and see what happens. I don't think they even ever experimented with the idea of, let's see what happens if we increase his chances of running.
Yeah.
So the rest of the team, Soler, Cooper, Segura, the catchers, there's not much stolen base potential there, obviously. So I think it is certainly a case where the speedy guys that the Marlins have aren't on the field enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, in an ideal world, you'd like to see some of the mid-tier guys give it a go, see if that shortened distance helps in any way. But also with the injuries right now, I mean, how many of your starting lineup do you want to start risk by running the bases? Because stolen bases, they're fun and they're exciting, and fantasy stacks matter for a lot of fans. But ultimately, the risk reward of it, the value added, unless you're stealing at 70-75% of the time, doesn't actually add much value to your team.
No, it doesn't. No, it's a really good point. And to your point as well, like Birdie hasn't been playing as much. Jazz has been down. They're the two main likelihood sources of stolen bases. Arias is a funny one, mate. I've been thinking about Luis Arias too. He to me looks like he's probably like one of the slowest potential fast guys out there. I don't know why, but like I look like it from a body perspective. I think Arias should have some wheels, but he kind of has no wheels. Like he's not Stallings level, or Jacob Snailings, as Eli Sussman has coined him, which I thought was a really, really nice phrase. But Arias, I don't know if it's like, because we did hear like these knee issues and stuff, like when that trade was made. I don't know if maybe it's like there is some knee issue and he's just protecting himself. But even when he's running, not stealing, but running on the bases, when like Soler's blasted one and he's getting around, like he's pretty slow on the bases, to be honest with you. I do wonder if he's just kind of like not going full gas just to protect himself a touch. But it looks a bit awkward and cumbersome, I must say, on the bases. But there's no slander here for Luis Arias. There's nothing negative I could say about the dude because he's just an absolute stud. But to your point, he's on base so often. And it's interesting that the Marlins just haven't looked to ask him to push that ticket just to create the seed of doubt. Because to be honest with you, with Arias stood on first, I don't even expect anything like at all to him to even go, to be honest with you. And for a guy that's on so frequently with Soler ahead of him, there'd be a lot of value there in kind of stealing that one, because Soler isn't just hitting bombs. Like we saw yesterday, like multiple gappers where they're massive ringing doubles, but Arias is still stuck on third. So anyway, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at Sleeper. New graphics, new ad, new sponsor. Love to see it. Locked On with new sponsors. This is it. En Fuego. Listener counts up. YouTube subscribers up. You love to see it. Guys, are you using the Sleeper app for daily fantasy baseball? If not, why not? And if you want to 100x your money on daily fantasy baseball, Sleeper is now offering up to 100x payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less on your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you could win big time. Here's what you got to do. Use the promo code Locked On and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Said that right. Currently operational in over 30 states. You can check out Sleeper today. All right, speaking of sleepers and stolen bases, I think Dane Myers could be a sneaky little source of stolen bases. I think he's snared a good chunk in AAA. Like, I think the dude can run. But I'm saying that without looking up the numbers, so I could be completely wrong. But I don't know. We'll wait to see if he is going to be playing any center field. I think he's maybe stolen over 20 bags in AAA. Sean's nodding, so I'm assuming he's looking it up.
14 this year in AA, 2 more in AAA, and 20 last year in AA. So, yeah, he's got some speed there.
Gasolina from Dane Myers. I mean, again, I mentioned it on the previous episode. Like, the Marlins can get any sort of production at center field from Dane Myers. It will just be a stunning dub for them. The Marlins go in game 3 here. They're looking to take this series. So let's just kind of round up here real briefly. Brian Hoeing getting the ball in game 3. Yuri Perez will be getting the ball in game 4. Interesting for these guys to bounce back against what is not a putrid offense. So listen, I know they got lit up, both of them, against the Bravos. The Cardinals offense isn't the Bravos one, but it's still not, putrid. It's going to be interesting to see the way these boys bounce back. I am very intrigued because Hoeing heading in, and Yuri Perez obviously heading into that Brave series, they've had such a great run. Perez obviously mainly, but Hoeing's done a nice job. And this is it. Can Brian Hoeing continue to keep it rolling against a probably above average offense, to be honest with you, without looking at the numbers? He's only had a couple of starts and short starts at that. But if he can keep it rolling against the Cardinals, keep them, tamed, I think that's going to be a big dub. I'm interested to see what the Cardinals pitcher can do and how the Marlins offense, performs the next couple of games. But for those two in particular, big starts after big blow-ups last time around, right?
Yeah, 100%. It'd be interesting to see how they react. Obviously, both young guys, particularly very young. Yeah. And certainly his first taste of major league adversity. I think you're right. This Cardinals team, as bad as the team is or the record is, a lot of that is tied to the pitching. The actual offense is a pretty decent offense. Hopefully it is a case of they bounce back. The Atlanta hot weather, although of course it's not any colder in Miami, but hopefully the box of balls that the Braves were using or whatever was happening. I've seen some I've heard some conspiracy theories on social media.
Screaming. Someone was screaming.
I'm not confirming or denying what I think of that, but it will be interesting to see how they bounce back for sure. And I think, I've got every confidence that this was just a blip for them.
Yeah. With that being said, mate, the Marlins have at least split a 4-game series with the Cards. They've got the Phillies coming in. 3 games with the Phils after that to round it up before the All-Star break. I mean, the Phils equally have caught fire recently too. The top 3 from the NL East this year right now are all scorching hot. And the Mets actually are starting to kind of build a touch of momentum. That series before the All-Star break against the Phils, I think, is going to be a huge, huge series. I think as well the Phillies pitching looks good for that too. I think they line up with maybe Nola and Wheeler going. It's going to be a big test. Sandy will be going, though, for the Fish in that series in game 1. And then I guess you'd have Brax and Luzardo. So the Marlins are going to have their strength in there too, apart from Yuri Perez, obviously. But what a big series to finish up there before the All-Star break. And what a statement it would be if the Marlins could win that series against the Phils, because truly the Phils and Marlins, they are literally like direct competitors this year. And I know the record against the Bravos has not been good, 1-9 thus far, but if the Marlins can have a positive record against the Phils, that is going to be a big, big boost in their postseason runs this year, right?
Yeah, I mean, so far this tricky schedule that the Marlins have started and played well through, albeit factoring in the Atlanta series. Like, if they can go 500 from here, or a game under 500, or whatever, however you want to look at it, if they can just stay above water and keep that 13 games over 500, if they can keep that around that number going into the All-Star break, then you say job done. That's a very good first half. That is a first half that you can absolutely go into the second half going, we're in contention, we're buyers, let's start looking at our options and improve this team for ultimately a playoff run.
No doubt. There's some teams I think that match up really well for the Marlins trade-wise. I mentioned them earlier. Cardinals is definitely one of them. I do think the Red Sox and the Orioles as well are really good trade partners for the Marlins. Whether that's now, whether that's the offseason, I don't know. But I look at both those teams and think, there's an abundance of talent on the offensive sides, I think, in both in the Major League and particularly the Orioles farm system. A lot of Major League ready guys there. I think they've just got Maybe Colton Cowser, I think, is on the way as well now for this most recent series. So, but they need pitching too. Like the Orioles, they're winning games. The offense looks good, but they definitely need some arms, and I think they've got a surplus of bats. So I can see either of those three teams or all three of those teams, the Marlins, doing some business at some point. May not be the deadline. It may be. I don't know, but I do think they match up well. Guys, it's going to wrap us up for today's episode. Thanks to the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. Thanks for you guys for joining and making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Of course, we're going to be back tomorrow because it's a daily pod, guys. So make sure you join us then, and we'll see you then.